May I have your attention? Please welcome TechCrunch Managing Editor, Matt Burns.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Burns. Thank you so much for coming back for the last day of TechCrunch Disrupt and the final round of Startup Battlefield for 2023. I got to take you back to yesterday. After the show ended, TechCrunch editorial staff picked the finalists, and it was contentious. It got loud, people had feelings hurt, and friendships were almost lost. But together, the TechCrunch editorial senior staff narrowed it down to 6 different companies. These companies you've already seen. They presented within the last 2 days, but they're back to a whole new panel of judges. They're gonna have 6 minutes to present, and they're gonna get 8 minutes of questions from the judges. Expect deeper questions, more thoughtful questions as well, too, as we go forward, because we wanna dive deep into these companies' history and their future as well. The companies are competing for a $100,000 check from TechCrunch to them. There's no equity taken. We don't charge a fee for this. This is a prize that we'd love to give out to companies, and we'd love to see pictures of this giant check making its way down Market Street in San Francisco and through airports around the world. So with that, I'm gonna bring out the judges, and we're gonna get going. So judges, come on out. You know this drill. I have to read some bios now. Okay, starting next to me, right to my left, is Mamoon Hamid. He's partner at Kleiner Perkins. He's been an early stage investor in and served on the boards of some of the most innovative software companies of recent times, including Box, Figma, Intercom, Netscope, Slack, and Yammer. Prior to joining Kleiner Perkins, Hamid was a co-founder of Social Capital, and prior to that, a partner at US Venture Partners. Next to him is Mar Hershenson, founding partner of Pear VC. Mar has earned a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University and developed groundbreaking techniques of optimizing the analog semiconductors. Since then, she's accrued 13 years of founder experience, co-founded 3 startups in mobile e-commerce, enterprise software, and semiconductor industries, and has registered 14 separate patents. As Pear's co-founder and managing partner, Mar brings operational and technical expertise to the investment team. Next to her is Charles Hudson, founder and managing partner of Precursor Ventures. Precursor is an early-stage venture capital firm focusing on investing in the first institutional round of investments for the most promising software and hardware companies. Prior to founding Precursor Ventures, Charles was partner at SoftTech VC. In this role, he focused on identifying investment opportunities in mobile infrastructure, mobile applications, and marketplace. Next to him is Marissa Mayer. Marissa is the CEO and co-founder of Sunshine, a startup building smart everyday apps to help manage your relationships and free up your time. Previously, Marissa was a CEO of Yahoo, where she led a transformation of the company, rejuvenating its culture, growing to more than 1 billion users worldwide, and reinventing Yahoo's business. Marissa also spent 13 years at Google as an early employee and the first woman engineer. For more than a decade, she led product management for Google Search, Google Maps, Google News, and other products. Next to her is Matthew Panzarino. He's been a professional photographer and media founder, served as the managing editor for The Next Web, and most recently, the editor-in-chief of TechCrunch, where he served as lead editor for the last 10 years, which meant for the last 10 years, he's my boss. And now he's leaving. I want to thank you, Matthew, from the bottom of my heart for your opportunities, your grace, and your understanding of my expense reports. Thank you so much. Last, we have Dana Settle. Dana is the co-founder and managing partner at Greycroft. As a member of Greycroft's management team committee, she was responsible for the firm's operations, investment strategy, and vision. Dana is on the investment committee for all of Greycroft's funds and has been involved in all phases of their growth. Prior to Greycroft, Dana spent several years as a venture capitalist and advisor to startups in the Bay Area, including 6 years at Mayfield and investment banking at Lehman Brothers. Let's give them a round of applause, everyone. Okay, here we go. So we're gonna bring out the first company, and again, like every other day, I need you to bring the energy, clap them out with nice, strong energy, and then we'll get going. So from LA, California, Parallel Health. Presenting for Parallel Health is Nathan Brown and Natalie Robinson. Give them a round of applause.
My name is Natalie Scalea-Robinson, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Parallel Health. In the world of precision health, I don't follow trends, I set them. You've likely all taken antibiotics, at least once in your life. Strep throat, stomach infections, skin issues. Antibiotics have saved our lives, full stop. But we also know that taking too many antibiotics can pose a danger to our health because of side effects and antimicrobial resistance. The World Health Organization says that antimicrobial resistance is a top 10 global health threat to humanity, and by 2050, over 10 million people will die from an antibiotic-resistant infection. Enter Parallel, a precision phage platform utilizing testing with whole genome sequencing, robotics, automation, and big data, machine learning, and AI. Phages are microbes that infect bacteria. They're like antibiotics, except they're natural and they're targeted. They're like precise assassins that kill the bad bacteria, but leave the good bacteria alone. Phages were discovered in the early 1900s, and scientists and doctors used them to treat illnesses like cholera and dysentery. But they didn't have the sequencing technology that we have today. And in the 1920s, we, the Western world, found antibiotics, and they were effective. They killed everything, and they were cheap to produce. So we left phage therapy behind. But with the rise of antimicrobial resistance, scientists like those at Parallel have used phage therapy to save lives under the FDA's emergency use authorization. Today, Parallel has developed a platform that covers and applies to other areas of human health. We're starting in skin. Why? Dermatologists are the #1 prescribers of antibiotics across healthcare. I met my now co-founder, Dr. Nathan Brown, at a skincare startup where we both worked, and we brought to market the first ever phage-based serum targeting C. acnes bacteria for acne. And here's what we learned. In a certain cohort of people, it worked tremendously well. We were able to get people off of antibiotics and Accutane. And yet, in another cohort, it didn't hurt them, just nothing happened. And so to understand this discrepancy, we sequenced their skin microbiome, and we learned that in this first cohort, these people had an overgrowth of C. acnes, which completely made sense because our serum was targeting C. acnes. And in the other cohort, these people had an overgrowth of other types of bacteria, Pseudomonas, S. aureus, sometimes it was fungi or even mites. And we realized that if we were going to bring a precision solution to the market like phage, then we were going to have a test and a ton of data. So we joined the Illumina Accelerator, where we amassed the largest database on the skin microbiome to date using whole genome sequencing. Today, I'd like to introduce our Skin Microbiome Discovery Kit and our custom phage serums. Let's pan to the kiosk where we can see Katie and show you how this works. Here is our Skin Microbiome Discovery Kit. Unlike others who have only 1 swab, we have 4 swabs. It turns out your forehead microbiome might be different than your chin microbiome. We also include a control to control for microbes in the room. Once Katie's done swabbing, she's going to send those back to our lab. Let's go to our Zoom live feed. Here, we use automation and robotics to prep the sample, and then we sequence. Unlike others who use a technology called 16S, we use a more advanced technology called whole genome sequencing that allows us to see not only bacteria, but also viruses, fungi, and even mites. We then use an internal spike to be quantitative, and then unique bioalgorithms to categorize your skin microbiome type. Our test is so thorough that we can see when you have antibiotic resistance genes or even viruses that have been correlated with non-melanoma skin cancer. We can't report on those results just yet, but here's what we can tell you. Let's go to demo. Here we can see Katie's results. You can see her skin microbiome type, her skin age, her diversity score, hydration levels, an outline of good and bad bacteria, as well as recommendations on food and skincare ingredients, and of course, her phage serum. Let's go back to presentation. Parallel has defined 8 different skin microbiome types and 8 different phage formulations. Parallel produces its phages by leveraging our proprietary biobanks of over 10,000 bacterial, phage, and fungal strains, and then use high-throughput screening to select the right phages. Let's go back to the live feed. Here we use bioreactors to produce and scale the phages at extremely high titer, which allows us to achieve and maintain efficacy. Let's go back to presentation. We have a wait list of over 6,000 people to date, 5 patents, and an LOI from a Fortune 500 company to develop novel ingredients. When scaled beyond skin to other areas of human health and therapeutics, Parallel projects revenue potential of over $5 billion in 2030. Parallel's team features world-class experts across science, medicine, big data, AI, engineering, and business. We're launching an exclusive preview here at TechCrunch this week. Please visit us at parallelhealth.io, where you can biohack your skin. Thank you.
Okay, Dana, let's start with you.
Oh, well, thank you. Great presentation, and it's an exciting area for sure, and I think your timing is terrific. I'm curious, though, just in terms of the model, because I think you're launching your first product. Is the plan that you will exclusively launch your own products, or will you be enabling or ingredients in sort of other products?
Both, actually. So we made a strategic decision in the future that we needed a lot of data, right? So we wanted to go, and we had a compelling product to offer to the market. So we're going direct to patient and consumer. However, we have been approached by CPG companies to develop novel ingredients. And we have the ability to do that. So we're doing that as well.
A lot to, as a startup, it's a lot to take on. I was curious, sort of where you're really going to be focusing your energy. So primarily on your own products?
Primarily now, yes.
Got it.
But in the future, we see other lines of revenue.
Terrific.
Mar?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand if this will be a cosmetic or a therapeutic. Like, I think Accutane is really effective and also really cheap if you get reimbursed. Are you guys going that route, or is it going cosmetic route? And if it is, then what is the cost out of pocket for folks to do this?
Yes, so currently we are a cosmetic test as well as cosmetic serum, so skincare. But we've been led by the data, and we absolutely see clinical applications in the data that we're seeing. As I mentioned, we see antibiotic resistance genes in bacteria, viruses that have been associated with non-melanoma skin cancer. So all of this data really points to therapeutic applications and clinical applications in the future, which we're working towards. In terms of the question around cost to consumers, we have a starter kit that includes the test and your first serum. It starts at $385. But we are working on a subscription model where you're paying $150 to, let's say, $200 a month, where then testing is included, and we wanted to work towards that.
One quick question. What's the margin on that? Because you have to do the testing. I know it's going to come down in price, but
That's right.
If you're charging that, how much?
Yeah, the margins on the test are fairly slim. But we're trying to get to about 30 to 50%, depending on volume. But the margins on the skincare are typical sort of skincare margins that are quite high.
Charles?
It's okay. I'll do it later.
Can you talk just about the state of the technology around sequencing and the formulation, and like how much more R&D you feel like you need to do there to get to commercialization?
Sure.
Yeah, I think we're ready to launch. So we're going to launch after this event. And really the sequencing is the enabling technology for phage therapy, and it's already there. What's really driven or enabled this is the decrease in cost thanks to Illumina and other companies. So that's ready. And you can really get precise idea of what's on someone's skin microbiome with that technology already. And so we've really focused on producing the phage and getting those scaled up. That's a major challenge that we've overcome, and we're ready now to launch.
Thank you.
Momo?
Yeah, as a direct-to-consumer business, how do you intend on getting distribution for your products?
So currently, of course, direct on website, through Amazon as well, but we are putting together pilot programs with estheticians, med spas, derm clinics who have shown interest in various cities across the the US to start, but we are looking at that sort of B2B2C model as well.
Mar?
I have a quick question. Do you know how much are the sales of Accutane in the US yearly? I don't know. I don't have my phone, otherwise I can check.
That is a great question. I don't know what it's at currently today.
Okay.
I think it's also muddied by sort of reimbursement as well. So,
But you could take that money at some point, right?
sure. I mean, we've seen results where people have been able to
Okay.
get off of Accutane, and so that was really inspiring to us as a cosmetic product.
Okay.
Marissa?
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the technology behind the production of the phages, because obviously there's a lot of technology around antibiotics. How well does that transfer to you? Is it totally different? And what some of the constraints of production look like?
Yeah, that's an important question for us. It's been a major focus. We use a bioreactor, as you saw. That technology is established. The processes for phage are different. So the phage grow as the bacteria grow. So it's two dynamic processes you have to manage. Fortunately, we have advisors who have been working on this for 20 years. I've got 4 years of experience. It is distinct from a small molecule manufacturing process, but it uses some of the same tools. So the technology is there. We've developed the processes in-house, and that's part of our IP, is the secret sauce behind manufacturing.
Matthew?
Yeah, I was just curious, on the IP front, which is it's always nice to have something that nobody else has. How much of it is manufacturing? How much of it is in the serum? Can you describe like kind of the rough shape of those patents?
Yeah, so there's a few areas that we patent. One is the formulation itself of the phages. Now, phages are natural products. You can't patent them, but you can patent how you stabilize them. So our products are room temperature stable for months. This is what we would need to go to a CPG partner, and this is what the consumer wants on their shelf. You don't want to pull it out of the fridge. I don't anyhow. So that's patentable, as well as some of the processes. We can set up some pickets around the processes, and we've been encouraged to do that, especially if we go into therapeutics. That's done quite often. So those are some main areas that we focus on patenting. In addition, if we do go therapeutic, which we are actively working on at the moment, there's genetic engineering technology that we can introduce, and we have patented some novel genetic sequences for the phages we're developing for therapeutics. So that's another aspect, another moat, IP moat we can, besides branding, which is all important. Right?
Sure.
So
Thank you.
Go to Mar and then Amun.
You can go first.
Okay.
I think I've been.
All right. Could you talk about the capital needs and the capital intensity to scale up production of the first product?
So as Nathan mentioned, we're there. So to date, we've raised $2.3 million. We're looking for an additional, at a minimum, $2 million currently on a safe, and we're raising that. Now, obviously, if we go into, I'll say when we go into therapeutics or clinical applications, we'll obviously have to raise a lot more.
And how much of that goes towards just the equipment required to the robotics, to make the products?
So we've outlaid some of those expenses already. So I'd say, so of that 2.3 million we've already raised, the vast majority has gone into the technology and R&D. But luckily, as we scale, it'll decrease in costs.
Got 30 seconds left, and Mara has one more question.
Okay, my question is, you guys are so technical, so many patents, and part of the challenge of a company like yours is you have to go buy customers, right? And acquiring is so expensive. You're probably gonna need more than $2 million to do that. Why not, like Dana said, license your tech to other people that already have brand and access to those customers? You may be a more profitable business. Like, what was the reasoning behind that?
It's a fair question. And to be fair, I think when we first started, we didn't think we were going to go into licensing, but we were approached by the CPG company. So we said, great, we'll do that too.
Yeah, let the market speak.
But I think microbiome and what we're introducing in terms of phage is so novel that there is a component of education that we have to do with the consumer. People generally have heard about the microbiome, but I think it's really advantageous for us to be able to create content and share the value of microbiome and personalization.
I would just tell you, it's so expensive to educate the consumer that you really want to rely on other folks to help you.
You're right. No, you're right. And
We're
we
going to
look-
leave it on that advice. We're out of time. Thank you so much. Give them a
Thank
round of
you.
applause.
Appreciate it.
Coming to us from the Great White North of Toronto, Canada, we got Magnistar. Presenting for Magnistar is Jacqueline Good. Give her a round of applause.
Of building amazing space spectrum simulation technology, you can find me sailing and training for space. Hello, my name is Jacqueline Good. I'm the founder and CEO of Magnistar. I'm here with Demo Danny. We are thrilled to be presenting Magnistar and 24/7X. 24/7X is spectrum simulation and coordination infrastructure, bringing relief to the space sector. Next slide. Welcome to space. Everything that we do in terms of financial verification, GPS navigation, financial services, as well as telecommunication and Earth observation, relies on space technology. Radio frequency waves moving between Earth and space consistently for service. As we move from 8,000 satellites to over 100,000 satellites in space, the overall noise level between Earth and space is set to dramatically increase, causing interference and outages of the services we depend on. The current process set in place for obtaining spectrum, coordinating amongst other operators, and protecting your spectrum rights is an intensely manual, costly, and timely process that all operators and regulators are struggling through. Magnistar is taking on this challenge, especially as, if we are unable to have dependable space technology, it puts the entire sector in jeopardy. Space technology, and that's what we're bringing forward. We are here to ease the complexity of space spectrum. We simulate at scale when multiple satellites will be directly in a collinear vector and interfering with one another. We predict this both in the short term as well as in the long term, over a 2-year period of time. What is the likelihood of multiple satellites or constellations interfering with one another, and does it go beyond the thresholds of the regulators that are put in place? We uniquely embed that simulation technology into coordination infrastructure. One of the satellite operators we are working with in building out this technology, they received an allocation of spectrum from the International Telecommunications Union, and they then received 70 letters from different operators saying they were going to interfere. They then had to go to each one of these different operators and prove to each one of them why they would not interfere with them, using simulation technology that takes a week to set up a given simulation, over 24 hours to get a result, and writing letters back and forth, having their engineers and PhDs writing letters in order to go through the coordination process. We have automated portions of this process to expedite how satellite operators work together, and then monitor post-coordination to ensure compliance of these agreements. In doing so, we are protecting satellite operators' most valuable asset, which is their spectrum rights. Next slide. You can think of us as your one-stop shop for all spectrum management. We build in an operator safety net so that any new filings coming out of the International Telecommunications Union are run through our simulation technology and flagged to the operator on which ones to pay unique attention to and to go through the coordination process with. We then simulate at scale the spectrum interference, the interference that will occur, and clear communication pathways between Earth and space, as well as between operator-operator relationships and operator to regulator. Let's jump into the demo. You can see here as we open up the 24/7X platform, I have notifications. These notifications include all the new filings that have recently been released, new allocations of spectrum. What is spectrum? What does the market look like today? Which ones should I be paying attention to as an operator and going through coordination agreements with? Which new filings, or have there been modifications on filings that I already have coordination agreements with? And is there new data that has been communicated back and forth between me and another operator that I'm currently coordinating with? If we run into actually running a simulation, which we're going to go through today, you can see the portal of all the different agreements we're currently working through. This would be the one-stop shop for all operators to see their coordination agreements they're working through, their simulations, everything logged, all correspondence back and forth logged accordingly for ease of reference and proof that you are working through those coordination agreements. We go through and we run a specific simulation. This will mean that in the back end, the system is actually running how multiple satellites will be orbiting Earth at a regular cadence and how often their likelihood is to interfere with each other. And if it goes beyond any of the thresholds, based on calculations approved by the International Telecommunications Union. We click in and we can see one of them as actually a fail. This is the equivalent power flux density equation. It is a fail, meaning that in real time, if this was to occur, the operator would have received an outage or an interference event that would have had a service issue. In this instance, we can work directly with the operator in this operator-operator sandbox to request more information to de-escalate this risk. If it is a pass, as in the thresholds are not exceeded, we can go ahead and complete that coordination agreement and notify the regulator that it has been completed, closing the circle. This is immensely critical, again, as this is what we depend on for all the services that we rely on here on Earth, is clear passive communication, and that's what Magnistar is bringing to the table. Let's jump back into the presentation. Next slide. We are building this into a semi-autonomous enterprise signal system. Next slide. We have achieved alignment with 11 geostationary operators, 14 non-geostationary operators, 8 government organizations across military, regulators, and international bodies who have signed letters of intent, prepaid to be a part of our early adopter program, and we have won a military contract. Next slide. They see this being valuable both as an internal and external solution because we're building the coordinations directly in and we're the first company to conduct that work, both for on-demand as well as real-time long-term simulations, and because we're planning on building this in to a spectrum exchange. The only way that we can create a secondary market for spectrum and release spectrum back into the ecosystem is by ensuring that spectrum, as it's being subleased, will not interfere with others and that the coordination agreements are being completed, and that's why we're uniquely positioned as a company to bring this to fruition. We're also within their community. I am a delegate of the International Telecommunications Union. I am a part of the United Nations, bringing all new regulations forward for satellite communications. Next slide.
That's where we're going to have to end it. I'm so sorry
Thank
we're
you
out
so
of
much.
time. Give her a round of applause. Let's start with Mar.
Oh, there you go. You're giving me the floor. Okay, it seems like you're building this exchange. So there's some regulators and some operators. The regulator is an international body, I assume. What does it take for you to get to work with this international body and then, you becoming the standard?
Absolutely. So the international body is the International Telecommunications Union, and then all the administrations. So each country has their own administration, which does the spectrum allocations as well, and they all tie up to the International Telecommunications Union. We are members of the International Telecommunications Union as Canadian delegates. So we are already a part of the community that builds all rules and regulations and are moving forward to this technology being the new standard, which is seen as needed by all the 11 geostationary operators, 14 non-geostationary operators, and 8 government organizations, including multiple of the regulators and international body, that are aligned with our objectives towards making this the new standard.
If you put a timeline on it, like at what point, if you want to request spectrum, you have to use Magnistar's software or forms or whatever, or simulations. Do you have a sense? Is it a year, 10 years? Like, I have no idea how slow these people are or how fast they are.
Yes, so I think that we see it specifically as we will be achieving that benchmark within the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, thanks.
Dana?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, so without you, what happens? I mean, because I actually started in the cellular industry 100 years ago, so, we had roaming agreements across the carriers, and companies sort of work together. I mean, different issues, because you didn't have satellites. You were dealing with, fixed assets, but the spectrum issue was a meaningful one. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand, does it have to be an independent body? Does it have,
Yeah, so it's great that you come from the terrestrial market. In terms of the difference, one of the differences between the terrestrial and the space market is the dynamics of space. Typically today, in order to defuse interference issues on the terrestrial market, they'll send physical trucks to locations to sense for spectrum. That's much harder to do in the space ecosystem, which is why we are leveraging a data solution to predict when interference will occur. And at the same point, we actually are seeing quite a bit of traction with the operators we're working with today that they would like us to involve more terrestrial markets, specifically because they're seeing more interference potentially between the space and terrestrial ecosystem. The way that I see ourselves playing into that is that we are building the technology that enables all operators and regulators to assess how, as we go from 8,000 satellites to 100,000 satellites, how these constellations will coexist and affect one another. We are building the enablement tools to enable every single satellite operator and regulator to perform the advanced calculations, because currently in the process today, it's them manually going through the new filings, running the simulations themselves in one solution, producing reports in another solution, going back and forth between operators in another solution with emails and letters back and forth one another. And monitoring post-coordination is a pretty big question mark. So we look at that entire process and how we can build in semi-autonomous systems into that to expedite the process and ease it, because currently today it would take months to a year, even 2 years, to go through a given coordination agreement, and we'd like to get that into a much faster expedited rate so that operators can focus on operating their satellites.
But today, it's not a requirement that they use a third party. I mean, you would like it to be, I assume.
Yeah, so we are looking for a regulatory moat within the solution. Operators can use this technology today. Most operators we've been working with would like to start using it whether the regulatory regime are recommending it or not, specifically because we have so much advancements in the simulation speed and because they can keep a consistent cadence of all their coordination agreements that they're working through and applying this in real time because it directly ties to their revenue. If you have outages in communications, it directly ties into their service license agreements, and that hits the revenue directly.
Mamoon?
Could you talk about your first few customers? How long did it take to sell to them? What does an average deal look like?
Yeah, so in terms of our first few customers, we are a 20-month-old company. We'll hit our 2-year mark in December. So we have already, we have one military customer. We retained that military contract 4 months ago, so within our first year and a quarter. And then we received our second, we actually just opened our early adopter program last week. We've had 4 satellite operators sign on already to become early adopters starting in February of next year. And we have early beta testers who are testing the technology today.
Charles?
Related to that, I don't know much about the satellite industry. Can you tell me what's the balance between government and commercial? How concentrated is it in terms of the number of operators? I'm just trying to get my arms around what the customer environment looks like.
Yes, so there are currently 300 that we can attest to, 300 active satellite operators. In terms of percentage-wise, from commercial to government, it's actually massively increasing on the commercial side. There are many more commercial operators. So we have 300 active satellite operators, 1,500 new space satellite operators who are coming into fruition. This is a massively growing sector. We also have 183 administrations who are allocating spectrum on a regular basis. And then also we are bridging into the terrestrial market as well. In terms of the average deal side, I think that was also a question. We're unable to say that on stage today, but we do have 3 different models of how we're pricing this. One is a very low barrier to entry model where we charge per simulations. We can get every single startup, every single university, every single administration on the platform. The second one is an enterprise edition where we have a fixed cost on a yearly basis, which is in skew what they're used to paying today. They're used to paying today about $70,000 to $100,000 per user. So we are in skew with that. And then the third is actually taking a portion of the spectrum exchange within the platform.
We'll go to Mara and then Matthew.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One is I know there's a lot of international satellites as well. Are you able to sell, is it US, or are you able to sell to China, Russia? And do they need to be in the platform for you to know whether folks are going to be aligned and there's going to be interference? Like, do you need everybody to be data to be able to run a simulation that is accurate?
So we can run the simulations today using the telemetry information. The telemetry is where the satellites are at a given time and where they're likely to be within 2 days. We also have the spectrum filings because many of those filings actually are public of which bands they have the capacity to use. So we can predict interference in that capacity. We are a Canadian company, so we are outside of specific regulations that are governing U.S. defense. So that's how we actually can sell to a global market quite sufficiently. We are working with operators in the United States, operators in Canada, in Europe, and as well we're onboarding folks in Asia as well. That is how we're approaching the market today.
And in terms of pricing, my understanding is that it's very top-heavy. So like the top 50 operators have 10 or more satellites, and then there's a long tail of operators. Do you charge per satellite, or do you charge, you said per user as your second model. Is user operator or satellite? What is user?
So user is per user, so per person at the desk using the technology. We considered a per satellite pricing model. Other folks have considered that as well. I find that it disincentivizes the larger players from entering the platform, and we want to make sure that we get as many operators as possible, especially because those larger players tend to have more spectrum. And they're the ones that are very encouraging of us building a spectrum exchange because they'd like to sublease portions of that spectrum to other markets. There's been $250 billion spent on spectrum allocation in the United States alone, and that's the market we're going after to make that more feasible for everyone to get access to.
I think my last question is, when can you sell to SpaceX? I think they're like 20% of the market.
Yes.
Please. It was
When
a
we-
real question.
That is a real question, right? When we sell to SpaceX. SpaceX is also a member of the International Telecommunications
Do they
Union.
do it themselves? I mean, I'm curious, they have the most satellites of anybody out there, right?
Yes,
Do
they
they
do have the most
deal with this
satellites.
themselves, or can you sell to them?
We can sell to them.
Okay.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Give a round of applause. From Medford, Massachusetts comes Electrified Thermal Solutions. Presenting for Electrified Thermal Solutions is Donnie Smith and Daniel Stack. Give them a round of applause.
My name is Dan Stack, co-founder and CEO of Electrified Thermal Solutions. We're working every day to decarbonize the hottest industries with electrified heat.
Thank you. So we have a massive problem today. There is no affordable way to decarbonize our heavy industries. Talking cement, steel, glass, what makes the chairs you're sitting in, the walls of this building, it all requires a tremendous amount of energy. And that energy needs to be three things: cheap, reliable, and hot. Flame temperatures in many cases, as you see on the screen here. So our zero carbon energy sources are just one out of the three. They're cheap. And that's already remarkable, but that doesn't run a 24/7 cement plant or a steel plant. As soon as you try to make it into reliable heat, you lose the cheap part. Say if you want to make hydrogen with it, you 6x the cost, which won't work. So we need a new approach. And that is why we founded Electrified Thermal Solutions, and it is why we've been developing the Joule Hive thermal battery. With this system, we take in electricity from solar, wind, nuclear, or hydro. When it's cheap or abundant or available, we turn it into heat into our box, and we make hot gas with it that can run your furnace, your boiler, your kiln, even turn a turbine in place of where you normally burn fossil fuels. So with this one system, the Joule Hive can turn that intermittent zero carbon power into industrial reliable heat. When I say industrial heat, I mean 1800 Celsius, really hot. Hot enough to do any job we need, and just as good as hydrogen, but 3 times or more cost effective. So still affordable. And most importantly, we can retrofit existing systems. We plug into your furnace, your boiler, and so you don't have to radically redesign what you're doing to decarbonize what you're doing. And the Joule Hive is unmatched in what it can do because of a new patented technology that we've been working on, and that is the building block of industrial decarbonization, the electrically conductive fire brick, or e-brick if you like. With semiconductor doping, we've taken ordinary fire bricks that can withstand flame temperatures, and we made them into electrically conductive heating materials. This means we can go hotter and last longer than any electric heating material on the market today, and it means we can build with this building block to massive scales you see on the screen here. The green are the conductive bricks. When we stack them up, we can build systems that hold lots of heat for industry, and it operates as 3 things: a giant electric heater, a giant thermal store to hold it for later, and a giant heat exchanger. We flow gas straight through and make hot gas, which is what the world runs on. So this invention was roughly 10 years in the making, mostly during my time at MIT. You can see me very cheery here doing some lab work. It had humble beginnings in the wet chem lab, but ultimately I got to meet my co-founder, Dr. Joey Cable out of UC Berkeley, who can't be here today because he's expecting his first child soon. But we got to work at it building out ETS and working with mature materials from real fire brick companies. And so we'll go live now to the lab, go to demo at our lab at Medford, Massachusetts, and we can showcase our progress. So when we started with industrially mature powders, but then we moved to larger systems with full aggregates, full brick pressing capabilities, and then ultimately we scaled up 1,000x in the last year or so to 1/2 ton of bricks that are made of our conductive material. Our test rigs at the lab here are to test materials properties, but also to do active electric heating tests, like this one shown here, where we prove that our bricks can deliver the intensities, the temperatures, and the wattages that our industrial customers need to run their processes. This past summer, we commissioned our pilot scale facility, where we are stacking up full-size bricks, and we are electrically heating them to 1700 Celsius, and we are operating it in the conditions that industry will see in the Joule Hive thermal battery as we provide the heat that they normally get from fossil fuels. All right, thanks guys. We'll go back to presentation. So, and there's a shot of it here. I think maybe the camera froze, but this is what our demo looks like. An elevator-sized box where we stack the bricks up. We will be scaling that up to massive sizes. Shipping container sizes first, but ultimately to these tall towers where we can deliver hundreds of megawatts of heat to the biggest industrial customers, and that is what they need. And we know we can get there due to familiar industrial experiences already. So the first product, though, is about 5 megawatts in and out. We can put out up to 1800 Celsius and anywhere in between. Constant heat, constant flow to your industrial process. And that does the job of a lot of customers today. As far as where it can deploy, we can beat natural gas today in huge parts of the country. Where you see this purple plume that's formed in the last 5 years, that is renewable energy driving the price of electricity negative. I told you it was cheap, but it's actually, when you can grab it when it's in surplus, we can beat natural gas. For example, in the Midwest, we have roughly a 5-year payback where we can decarbonize 80% of your energy and save you money in the process. Even in areas where we have regulated utilities, where there's less incentives, you could still pay back with the Joule Hive compared to your next best option, say electric boilers. When people want to decarbonize, they want the cheapest way, we have a 3-year payback compared to those. And we've had customers all across these different areas and across every industrial sector. Next slide. Where we're working them through our funnel, where they are working towards letters of intent and ultimately binding contracts, where we build our first system next year. We're going to have these on customer sites the year after that as we trigger these contracts. And that's in the steel, the cement, the glass, the adhesives industries, food and beverage, so a huge swath of folks. And they are also helping us apply to some really great government grants as well. So we plan to deploy aggressively 2 gigawatts and $500 million a year revenue by 2030. And the ultimate goal is industry electrified by 2045, a Joule Hive at every furnace, boiler, and kiln, roughly a $3 trillion market. We're looking for industrial partners to help us along the way. And of course, we'd love you to join our team, which is always growing. So please help us solve the toughest problems in the hottest space. Thanks a lot.
We didn't get to your question, Matthew, so let's start with you.
So when you're thinking of deploying these, who is your first, most juicy, wonderful, lovely customer? Who do you want to get to first, so that you can then prove out your ROI to the rest of the world?
Sure. So we have a bunch across different sectors. One of the best ones so far has been customers, usually big multinationals, especially to chemicals, for example, that have mandates that are willing to, they need to get there, and they have relatively simple things to hook up into.
Regulatory mandates?
For example, in Europe, but they have international units, and so, for example, we've spoken to several of them who just say, we need the cheapest way to do this, and for example, they're in one of those regulated environments where the price, you can't just grab the wholesale negative stuff. You need to play by the rules of the utility. Even there, though, we are the cheapest option for them, and they're easy to plug into. They need about 900 Celsius, which is very comfortable for us. And there's a bunch of those like that that are popping up.
How do you compare to propane, like on a per-cost basis?
Oh, much better than propane.
Okay.
But admittedly, what it really comes down to is the electricity price. So though the bricks, the box itself is very cheap. It adds very little to the cost of energy. The main driver is, can you get the cheap electricity? And as a storage asset, right, we can soak up the cheap stuff and give it to you 24/7. That's what allows us to compete. But propane is much easier to beat than natural gas.
You had Dana leaning in the whole time. She's excited. Let's go.
I mean, I am curious because I think you talk about it being able to retrofit and sort of being at price. Is it truly at price parity with existing solutions?
So it absolutely can be. And it again, really depends on where your electricity prices are. So there are certain areas it's not going to be at parity. But there's, that huge area of the map that we showed, Texas, the Midwest, where there's lots of wind energy, Wisconsin, Iowa, and you have drywall plants, adhesives plants, you have ethanol plants. That for them and for a growing amount of as that spreads out, and it does as we deploy more renewables, it's hitting cost parity, absolutely.
Because when I think about sort of how a business like yours, or anything that's sort of looking at sustainable alternatives, you really do need to be able to be at parity sort of everywhere. Because I mean, I think the regulatory enforcement is important, but I mean, commercial enterprises are going to adopt if it works for their business models. I mean,
People
right?
need the best price on
They
energy.
do need the best
That's
price
what
on
they care
energy,
about.
and so it's really interesting. But you're saying you are dependent upon the price of electricity wherever you're operating.
That's right. The amazing news is that solar and wind have come down
Yeah.
like extraordinarily. Right? It's a remarkable thing that's happened. It makes this possible where now folks can look at this and say, I want that.
And do you distribute, like, are there traditional distributors that you already work with, or are you selling directly to these multinationals, or what's the?
Sure. So first off, on our system side, the bricks themselves, we contract out. So we made a recipe that any brick manufacturer can make. So working very closely with manufacturers to scale this up rapidly. The rest of the system is kind of an integration process, metal walls, refractory lined walls as well, and piping. And so you can work with a contractor to kind of deploy the box by the specs that we give. So, big project developers can do the job, and we're talking with several of them.
Okay.
Rissa and then Charles.
I just had a couple of questions. One, so the material is just standard production fire bricks that you're storing the electricity in, is that right?
That's right. Mine is the secret sauce we have that makes them electrically conductive.
Okay.
It's a combination of those and regular bricks.
And it seems like a lot of times with energy and with heat, you lose a lot in the transfer. So it sounds like the plan is to basically build hives, if I understand it, that are co-located with the plants or the furnaces. Is that right?
That's right. We will co-locate them. You don't want to try and pipe really high temperature heat, many miles, say. Right. So the electricity comes in, and we store it there and deliver it, just through a pipe nearby.
And the bricks themselves aren't portable, or they are portable when they're electrified, or no?
The idea is
Can't
once
actually
they're
store
there,
it.
they're there.
Okay.
We're not going to drive hot bricks around the country.
And I was going to ask just about your go-to-market in terms of what size you're hoping to build for your first sort of flight of customers.
Absolutely. So that first unit, the shipping container size system, is a few megawatts, and that was based on customer feedback of what could do some of their easier jobs. There's a whole range of things, but so 5 megawatts, one or two of those boxes could run boilers, drying processes, at these sites we mentioned earlier. And basically, we're building the first one under our control next year. It's a sales tool. Folks can come, kick the tires. We negotiate a test case that says, what flow rates and temperatures do you want? We'll prove that on our first box, and if it does what you need, you buy one. So 2025, on customer sites with those first shipping container size boxes.
Charles?
I just had two questions. Can you talk about this? Are there any safety issues related with this technology relative to the status quo? And then is the customer expected to operate the Joule Hive, or is that the service you provide? I'm trying to make sure I understand the deployment model.
Sure. So business model-wise, we look at direct sale, they operate, maintenance contract, or heat as a service where we operate. And depending on what kind, we've heard from multiple customers of different types. It's kind of two archetypes there. As far as safety goes, I would definitely say compared to other storage technologies, this is much safer in general. The thing about the bricks is they are very, very hot in an insulated box, and that's it. There's nothing chemically reacting. It's not like a battery where if something short circuits, it explodes. The energy is already there as high temperature heat. It's not any different than any other industrial furnace. So the customers that need the high heat, they're used to working with high heat systems, and so it's not so different from things they already have on site, and so they're prepared to handle it in most cases.
Thank you.
Mar?
I have a quick question about the technology. Is this something you guys licensed from MIT? Is this completely new, or are there, similar bricks? People that may have used different, materials to do the similar thing.
Yeah, so I've been working at this for almost 10 years now, since 2014 at MIT. So I'm the inventor, along with my advisor, Dr. Charles Forsberg. MIT technically has the patent. We have the commercialization option.
Is it exclusive?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's all that matters.
Go last question to Mamoon.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a 5-year payback. Could you just sort of double click into that and how that compares to the status quo?
Sure. So, I mean, the status quo in that case, the business is usually compared to is, so let's say you're an ethanol plant in the Midwest, and you're burning a lot of natural gas to make your ethanol, which is an unfortunate part of ethanol production. You put our box on site, there's an upfront CapEx to that. We grab that cheap electricity when it's at a favorable price, and we sized accordingly, right, to have enough storage. And basically, over the course of the first 5 years, we were basically delivering cheaper energy than what they were used to burning on their status quo natural gas. And so on the 5th year, the box paid for itself. It'll keep running for another 15 years after that and keep paying back. Now, obviously, electricity rates change over time as well, but that was kind of taking a stagnant point and saying, what if this repeats? So.
Can I get one more quick one?
Yeah.
Sorry. But you do have to have the dual hive on site, and do these customers typically have something like that on site today?
Nothing like that on site today. Today, they just have a natural
real
gas
estate
burner.
that they need for that.
They will need real estate,
And-
that's
okay,
right.
okay.
So some folks have tons, others
Yeah.
it'll be tougher to fit, but it's a good point.
As good as in the Midwest.
That's right.
All right, thank you so much. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, from right across the bay in Oakland, California, we have Biotics AI. Presenting for Biotics AI is Robbie Bushami and Shaskin Saroff. Give them a round of applause.
My name is Robbie Bastami. At Biotics AI, we're using AI to detect fetal abnormalities. I set out to build a platform that improves the overall quality of diagnostics and makes sure that every single pregnant patient gets the quality of care that they need. I was raised by a family of obstetricians. My mother, her sister, her brother, all worked in maternal care. My mother passionately worked to improve the quality of maternal outcomes in her home country of Yemen as a physician and as a Berkeley researcher. As a kid, I fell in love with coding at 9 years old and later grew to become an AI engineer. But growing up around my mother's work, I became acutely aware of the growing problems in pregnancy care. $16 billion are lost annually in the United States alone as a result of preventable maternal complications. With the increasing shortage of OBGYNs, the growing rate of pregnancy complications, and with new legislation negatively impacting maternal diagnostics, it's becoming more difficult to identify these problems earlier to prevent tragic outcomes. In the developed world, half of pregnant patients with a fetal malformation are misdiagnosed due to an error by an ultrasound operator. Globally, 107 million mothers do not have access to the minimum standard diagnostic ultrasound. This is the #1 reason for the misdiagnosis of the mass majority of fetal abnormalities. Introducing Biotics AI. Biotics AI processes ultrasounds to detect pregnancy complications earlier with improved frequency and added efficiency. In our last session, we had a live stream with an OBGYN and a pregnant patient. And what you're about to see is a real ultrasound exam processed on a real patient. We've recorded that session so you can see how the workflow works, but we're going to be uploading the ultrasound live so you can see how our AI works in real time. Move to video.
Hello, everyone. So first, I want to thank our volunteer patients for coming here to help us share our technology. Thank you so much. So I've just conducted a second trimester fetal anatomical examination using ultrasound. But what I actually did is I mimicked a low-quality scan. With these low-quality scans, key regions in the fetal brain, heart, abdomen, or limbs are usually missing. So let us see if Biotics AI could solve this very common operator-dependent procedure. So we log in, we choose second trimester, we start our reporting.
Move to demo. This is what Dr. Hisham is viewing right now. Biotics AI is a vendor-agnostic, cloud-based solution that can integrate with any ultrasound machine over a standard API. Biotics AI validated the presence of all of the standard anatomical views and structures that need to be captured, ensuring the appropriate capture of over 80 different anatomical views and regions. So that way we make sure that the patient gets an accurate diagnostic screening. What we can see here is that one of the views of the fetal brain is missing. 1/3 of patients in the United States receive incomplete screenings. When an abnormality is present in one of these views, the patient is almost always misdiagnosed. Go to video.
Okay, hello again. So feedback came indicating that there are missing planes from our scan. So I'm recapturing the transcerebellar plane and I will upload it to the system in order to see if the error has been rectified. So image, pass it to the system.
Move to demo. Now, what Dr. Shem has just done is go back and capture the appropriate view of the fetal brain and upload that image. What we can see was done was our AI was able to validate that this view was now captured and then analyze the entirety of that particular view, ensuring that the key structures can be visualized so that the patient gets an accurate diagnosis. Now, our product goes beyond quality control and into guided diagnostics. The patient that we just saw is having a healthy pregnancy, and we wish her all of the best as she goes through her journey. Unfortunately, what we see here with this other patient is a malformation in the fetal spine. Biotics AI localizes the malformation, bringing it to the attention of the obstetrician, so that way we can make sure that the patient gets quality prenatal care and appropriate treatment has been provided. Move to slides. We conducted clinical studies on obstetricians that historically performed poor quality ultrasound scans, and the completeness rate of their screenings went up by 20%. Additionally, because we're automating reporting by extracting this information and generating documentation, we saved the hospital 8 minutes per patient on documentation time in these studies. Now, to build this technology, it took a world-class team of machine learning engineers and obstetricians that already had award-winning research in prenatal care, and also had extensive experience in delivering machine learning algorithms for different complex use cases. As far as our business model goes, we're using a hybrid pricing model with a subscription-based cost for baseline features and volume-based pricing for API calls. Where hospitals are incentivized to purchase our tool through the ROI we're providing through increased time savings, allowing for increased patient volume, reduction in patient callbacks, increased higher hospital reimbursements in the future through NTAP, and by mitigating malpractice costs. We're building the AI diagnostics platform for reproductive health. Our secret sauce lies in our data infrastructure, where we've been able to build one of the fastest and growing data sets of prenatal ultrasound images with access to 8 million images to date, and we're piloting across 8 healthcare institutions. The average cost of this type of project costs corporations tens of millions of dollars, and we've been able to bootstrap this for less than $100,000.
You got to wrap it up.
We're going to be expanding to adjacent markets like gynecology, urology, and neonatology, but we're starting with prenatal care, starting with a TAM of $2 billion. But through this expansion, we're going to be able to reach this vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give him a round of applause. And before we start the Q&A, just note that we generally require live demos, but where's your doctor located?
In Egypt.
Yeah, we're not going to make an expected mother go get a scan in the middle of the night, so thank you very much for that. If we can reset the clock, that would be great. First question, Marissa?
I might know enough to be dangerous, because I had a monochorionic twin pregnancy that required ultrasounds every 2 weeks that could be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours long. So I would actually welcome anything that makes that process more efficient for other expectant twin moms. But I guess one of my questions is, are you actually diagnosing the defects? That's one question. 2, the overall size of the data set, because at least for certain types of pregnancies, that data set can be overall quite small. And I do remember at the end of those ultrasounds, we always had to wait, make sure that the image set was complete, sometimes redo it, et cetera. So my perception was not that sometimes scans are missed, it's just that sometimes they have to be repeated. So I guess my question is really, is that misdiagnosis that you see really related to the just non-existence of the scan or the quality of the scan, or just the fact that it has to be repeated?
Sure, yeah, so great. So misdiagnosis can happen for a variety of reasons, but the number one reason for misdiagnosis is that there are key anatomical views that aren't captured. So true, after the initial diagnosis, there are repeat screenings that are happening, but when we're talking about the initial ultrasound exam, because of that operator dependency and that wide spectrum of skill sets, a lot of patients are getting these incomplete screenings. I was talking to an OB-GYN last week that was like, yeah, I just got a screening where only 3 anatomical views were sent to me. So it's quite drastic, the difference in quality. To answer your question about the data set size and the different types of abnormalities, so the first piece is making sure that the screenings are done completely and correctly. The second piece is then in localizing those malformations. What we're doing is we're identifying a deviation from a normal structural anatomy, but we're not saying, hey, this is spina bifida or this is birenal agenesis or one of these specific abnormalities. And the way we can do that is then by grouping abnormal data and normal data for each of the standard two-dimensional views of the fetal anatomy, and we can build out algorithms in that way. So that way we can actually leverage more data to be able to localize these anomalies.
And you're operating mostly on still images? Because I remember a lot of them had to do with things like blood dynamics, blood flow, blood pressures, et cetera.
Sure, yeah, so we're looking at structural abnormalities. So, so issues like preeclampsia or genetic abnormalities, those are diagnosed quite differently with NIPT and other techniques. 90% of abnormalities are structural abnormalities that are screened for in the second trimester, and that's where our focus area for our initial product is.
Dana?
I assume OBs love or want this. Is that true? I mean, that might be just my tech hat, always assuming that people want to actually leverage technology, or is there any resistance?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, well, in healthcare, when you're working with physicians, obviously you're dealing with different types of personalities, and everyone thinks like they're the greatest physician.
But you're not diagnosing. You're sort of giving them a tool.
Exactly.
Right?
So we're a co-pilot. So that's how we're coming in. So we're providing value to the physicians in multiple angles. So we're helping them with the quality control, making sure because of the high risk of malpractice cases and potential for error, we're making sure that they get this co-pilot so they can make sure that they're providing accurate diagnostics. And at the same time, we're providing added efficiency. So the number one reason for physician burnout in obstetrics is reporting and documentation. We're mitigating that time by automating reporting. So improving the workflow and then being this co-pilot in the diagnostic process. So the feedback has been good, but working around those other kind of cultural dynamics within healthcare. So
we'll go to Mamoon, then Mark.
Yeah, great presentation. Could you talk about the training data that you have, and what else do you need? Do you need to form partnerships with other academic centers where you get training data from?
Sure.
And then second question around just regulatory approvals for your software.
Sure, yeah. So to build out our data set, we partnered with university hubs around Egypt. So we partnered in Alexandria with Alexandria University, Tanta University, Zayt University, and then in Cairo, we also partnered with the first IVF center in the Middle East and the largest women's health center in a town called Maadi. And Egypt really has this high concentration of highly talented individuals, and we were able to actually partner with these institutions that are really eager to do this type of research. And a lot of us are myself and our CTO are data engineers at heart, so we built out the infrastructure. That was the first thing we did. We've also now partnered with 2 regional institutions in the United States to further expand our training data set and also test our data on biased data sets. As far as the FDA pathway goes, so we're going for FDA 510K. We've been working on our FDA for the last year and a half. We just finished our FDA clinical data collection as well. We actually collected twice as much data as what we need for FDA submission, so we're gearing up for filing relatively soon.
Great. Laura?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand if the current ultrasound manufacturers are your enemies or your friends. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, part of your defensibility is that you have this data, but if I look at GE, they have a lot of data accessible, right? So can you use them as distribution to get in as quickly as possible? Will they do it themselves? Like, why wouldn't they do it themselves?
Right.
And there's also a bunch of startups similarly trying to analyze ultrasound. So I'm trying to understand,
Sure.
how do you win?
The market landscape.
And how do you win ultimately?
Totally, yeah. So as far as the ultrasound manufacturers go, like the GEs, Philips of the world, they're really competing with each other, and they're not going to spend an immense amount of time on every single, because there's thousands of different specialties, tens of thousands of different types of, or hundreds of thousands of different types of indications they could build algorithms for. It makes way more sense for them to work with companies like us so they can compete with each other. So they're actually developing marketplaces. We're talking to manufacturers and different providers within the ultrasound space for distribution partnerships. So to answer your question as well around staying ahead of competition and penetrating the market, those conversations have been quite fruitful. I can't go into too much detail.
But that's great. They have a marketplace for folks like you to work with their hardware.
Yeah. Like GE Edison is like probably the most.
Okay, so then the question is, how do you become #1 on that app store?
Sure. Yeah. So the way we're looking at this is it's really important to build this like continuously growing data set so that you don't just stop with one single algorithm, but you really build out almost this network effect where with each ultrasound machine you integrate with, you can collect more data to build out new algorithms for new indications. So we're consistently scaling. So we're going to be scaling across obstetrics use cases and then into gynecology, urology, and neonatology, and really build that product stickiness with the hospitals that we're working with.
Charles?
Yeah, I was going to adding on to that, what's the current limitations on the product? Like what range of things can you detect? And I'd also just love to know, on top of the data, like what is, without saying too much, like what is the secret sauce? It sounds like obviously you've got access to a lot of data, but I'm trying to understand exactly what unique contributions you guys are adding.
Sure. Yeah. So, so as far as like what we can do today and what we're going to be doing. So today we can analyze over 80, actually more recently 90 different anatomical regions and structures. So validate the entire completeness of the screening. So really you're looking at two pieces. Was the entire anatomy captured? And then was it captured with high enough quality to be able to do a diagnostically accurate screening? That in itself will mitigate a huge chunk of misdiagnosis. The second piece is then building out malformation localization in each individual plane. That's currently in research and development, but we're focused right now on congenital heart conditions and the brain conditions, and that's actually going to be part of our next release. But we're scaling across the entirety of the anatomy. As far as how we built our data infrastructure, so the way we were able to do this was really build out these HIPAA-compliant environments, set up like a real-time streaming setup where we can actually collect a lot of this ultrasound data with our research partners. We automatically, programmatically anonymize this data, remove all patient information, and then we built out algorithms internally, like AI algorithms internally that actually do pre-annotation, and then we built our own R&D team of like annotators of med students and obstetricians that then go and correct the annotations so we can actually move super fast, and our per annotation cost is less than a cent per annotation. So
that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thank you so much.
All right.
You did good.
Thank you.
We have two more. The next one up is coming to you from Mexico City, Mexico. It's Ali Systems. Presenting for Ali Systems is Alex Sandoval. Give him a big round of applause.
Hi, I'm Alex, CEO of Ali Systems. We make machines speak and translate them into actions on the factory floor. Manufacturing is a broken system. Strained supply chains, inefficiencies, and downtime. We've thrown robots and automation at the problem, but downtime is costing us a $1.5 trillion sinkhole. It is urgent that we solve the foundation of the real-world economy now. The time is now when supply chain is rapidly changing. Due to disruptions caused by the global pandemic, trade wars, it is urgent that we do this now. The last few years have taught us and exemplified the fragility of our supply chains. A war in Ukraine with over-indexed grain production can nearly costed us a historical food crisis. The same can be said for steel, semiconductors, and copper, who bear the same problems. It is costly and slow for them to ramp up production. Emerging markets, the nearshoring is becoming the strategic pivot. Emerging markets are set to become the next global manufacturing powerhouses and the world's biggest economies in the next 50 years. As a Latin America, I feel very bullish about countries like Mexico and Latin America that are set to receive an $800 billion wave of production demand. But even as nearshoring and reshoring face tailwinds, the supply to meet demand is going to be an uphill battle. This is why we created Ali. Ali is a CapEx-light infrastructure that allows manufacturers to turn legacy operations into intelligent factories. We started with this hardware device. Stage camera, please. We call it the Ali Gateway. It has built-in code that supports the most widely used industrial communication protocols, allowing us to connect with over 90% of industrial machinery categories, sensors, and PLCs. It has built-in code processing data where we're able to run machine learning algorithms at a local level, enabling our clients for business continuity in the case of connectivity disruption or even force majeure. We install them in our clients' sites. It sits next to the machines, and it's pulling in data points from processes, from machines, and machine health. A single line can capture over 200,000 data points, giving us unparalleled access to a unique data set that has previously been unused and lived in a silo. With integrated ERP systems and maintenance data, Ali becomes the factory's central source of truth and a brain. We take all of this data, model it, and turn it into intelligent operations to enable our software component. Please move to demo. One of our cement clients loses $500,000 every hour their oven is not in production mode, making them incredibly sensitive to downtime. We're tracking every single one of their machinery. Machine learning algorithms detect irregular activity and machine failure. Here's what makes us different to all the other manufacturing software solutions out there. We don't stop at the alerts. Because we're able to track corrective action, we're able to give the factories the probable root cause and the recommended course of action. Years and years of factory know-how now gets to live on in a system, democratizing information for all of the operators in the factory. In our efficiency model, we're tracking productivity, availability, quality, and cost. We can detect if there's inconsistency in a specific mixture and if there's product wastage in a specific station. We'll tell you where it is, why it happened, and what to do about it. The beauty of our model is every single action on the platform ultimately improves our algorithms in very specific segments, creating network effects that benefit every single customer on our platform. Now, we thought really hard in an industry where every second counts, how can we make decision maker even simpler and faster? So we build an assistant that is trained with all of this data. You can ask it anything about your operation. Let's demonstrate. Ernie, can you please ask it to compare operational efficiency in the last 30 days by station and by month? We've asked it, you're able to do root cause analysis on downtime. You can do comparative analysis on efficiency between productivity shifts. We are the first of our kind to do generative AI for manufacturing. This is to fill a vacuum in the labor market for an aging population that needs to quickly upskill on the digital skills needed for smart manufacturing. There you go. This would have taken 2 weeks of data crunching to be able, and now you can solve it in seconds. Back to presentation. So imagine a world of Ali-enabled factories running AI-powered operations to enable dynamic supply chains to meet rapidly changing market conditions. We're proud to say that in 12 months, we have achieved 7 figures of revenue. We have $400 million being monitored and trained on Ali in foundational use cases with paying customers in cement, steel, and food and beverage.
You got to wrap it up.
We've proven ourselves in Latin America, and we're ready to take on the world. Thank you.
Very good. Charles, let's start with you. You're still writing, so I'm like a waiter.
Can you talk about what it takes to turn on one of your customers? Integration, onboarding, like what's that process like?
So we first start with a diagnosis. We take in all of their data, put it to data cleansing, and understand the efficiency opportunity that they have, adding value in the beginning at the pre-sale level. Then we do a diagnosis of the critical machinery that will add the most value, the Pareto, the 20% that will add efficiency. We will install it and put our devices in. A device can take a few hours per set of machines, and then we will train the operators and get live and running. The process from sale to activation will take around 2 months.
And can you cover all of the devices in their environment? Are there certain classes of things you can't monitor an instrument? Or?
What's great about our system is that we can connect to old machines that are legacy systems and also modern systems, directly connected to the PLCs of those machines.
Thank you.
Yep, Mamoun?
Yeah, I'm curious about the why now. Besides the generative AI stuff, what's motivating your customers to engage with you right now and pay you 7 figures?
So emerging markets, like companies like Mexico, they are pressured. One of the states where we have an office, Monterrey, Tesla has announced that it's coming, Tata, Foxconn. The pressure is on to digitize and able to defend themselves from newcomers, and they need to do this now if they want to capture the majority of value that is going to be caused from reshoring and nearshoring.
And do they have internal ROI studies around, hey, like, we're losing so much in waste, and whether it's labor or uptime on our equipment?
Well, surprisingly, some of our clients don't even know how much they're losing. So when they talk to us, we're able to model data on our pre-existing models and tell them where the opportunity lies in terms of processes and machinery. Some clients that already do, we're able to provide generative AI for advanced analytics to make them not reactive, but actually proactive.
Great.
Matthew?
Thank you. Manufacturing is hard everywhere, but it's really hard in emerging markets, especially developing ones that are getting a lot of influx of new customers. What enables you uniquely to scale in that kind of environment?
So I worked on predictive analytics for the turbine industry and thermoelectric power plants, being able to work on predictive models to do alarms. Then I spent 10 years, I lived in Asia, Europe, the United States, building SaaS products for different companies like Rappi, Oracle, and Google Cloud. I come from a manufacturing background, third generation, and I joined all of our experience to be able to bring modern-day SaaS into a legacy industry like manufacturing.
Mar?
Yeah, I think if you can educate me a little bit about the market, like you mentioned Tesla and Foxconn, those are folks that are already observing their machines. They're super sophisticated factories.
Yeah.
You talk about the legacy factories, like in a country like Mexico, who are you selling to? Are you selling to the little factories, to the Teslas?
Yeah.
I don't think so, but
We are, just to give you a stat, there's about 3 to 4 million factories in Latin America, less than 10% of penetration in software. Mexico alone has 600,000 factories.
Okay, out of those 3 and 4 million, how big are they? Like, what's the, you know what I'm saying? Like the distribution.
The larger industrial conglomerates represent about 10% of that market. That's who we are addressing today.
So there's a long tail of smaller factories.
No, the large industrial conglomerates on the other side of the pyramid.
Okay.
That's who we are targeting.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think one more question, one more, sorry. Are you saying those folks are not currently observing their machines?
Yes.
Okay.
That did it. All right, Dana?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of along the same lines of questioning, which is, I mean, are you really only working with kind of older factories? Is that what happens?
Typically,
when,
an industrial conglomerate will have a mix. They will have very modern machines, Siemens 2023 equipment with legacy machinery, and they're all living in the same line. The problem that automation does not equal digitalization. This industrial conglomerate can have a very new machine with very advanced sensors and controls, but it lives in a silo. It's not connected to other systems. You can't be able to draw correlations and patterns, and that's where we really come in.
So I mean, as venture capitalists, we always want to be investing into like the growth markets, right? And so what happens when everything's modernized and working? Where do you fit in?
Well, we're a SaaS model. So if they disconnect, they're going to go back to square one.
Yeah, it's surprising that there's no, big ERP, Oracle software that comes in and says, I'm going to help you run your factory.
ERP softwares try to do that. They have very limited capability, as we all know.
So maybe there are, but they're terrible. They're coming in. Okay.
Yeah.
Marissa?
I think overall, looking at the system, there's a lot of different challenging parts. I guess I want to hear from you which pieces are the most challenging in terms of, obviously, you've got to get the devices and the sensors into the factories, then you've got to get the data all together, then you've got to analyze it.
Correct.
And my hunch is actually that the software part of it is on the easier side, and it's actually the deployment of the hardware and getting a factory wired up that actually might be where the difficulty is.
The biggest challenge we've encountered, it's very easy for us to sell at the top of the chain. But when you go to the lowest stakeholder working in the facility, convincing them to adopt the software. We've made the experience, as you can see from our software, super easy. It looks like a B2C app, so it actually makes their life easier. But we're also realigning incentives, both from an emotional and financial level. So every time an operator hits a productivity target or a line, we'll put in, one of our clients requested a rock song, so we'll play it for them to make them happy and improve their quality of life. But we're also aligning efficiency targets. So if a client is able to drive incremental productivity, those efficiency gains are then translated back into the operator.
Mamoun?
Could you talk about maybe one of your multinational type customers and what they would pay you on a per factory basis based on number of machines, sensors?
I'll give you an example of one of our existing client. They're one of the largest ham producers in the region. They export to 45 countries. They're a $5 billion in revenue. They have over 35 facilities, and we're currently onboarded in 4. That's a typical ICP for us.
And in those 4 facilities, how many machines are you hooked up to? How many
About
sensors?
45 per line.
And what do they like about your product?
Productivity gains. So we are averaging about 15% in increased productivity from a line. So if one of your lines is producing $400 million, which is like kind of the average, we're talking about more than $40 million from $40 to $50 million in increased gains.
Is that predictive? Is that improvements in predictive maintenance or downtime reduction?
We have 3 avenues. So one of them is downtime reduction. The other one is reduction in product wastage. So you can reduce costs, and then you can also reduce maintenance costs by optimizing OpEx through analytics.
Okay, thank you very much. Give them a round of applause. We have one more company. Before we get to it, I need you to know how to apply for Startup Battlefield. All these companies are here because they applied. All the companies you see downstairs are here for the same reason, and we don't charge an entrance fee for any of this. If you go to techcrunch.com/startup-battlefield, you'll find it. Or you just Google Startup Battlefield, you'll find the application. For next year, we're gonna open up applications in February, so please be on the lookout for that, and please apply. And if you know a startup that's hot in the sector, tell them to apply too. All right, so we have one more company from Binghamton. I said that wrong. Did I say it right? I got the thumbs up. We have AgriTrack. Presenting for AgriTrack is Jason Hill. Give him a round of applause.
Hi, my name is Jamie Sonneville, CEO and founder of AgriTrack, and I'm on a mission to save family farms.
So this is me. I was raised in Southern California, but I've sold all around the world because my entire career has been in sales at every level. And about 5 years ago, I joined another ag tech SaaS startup and successfully took them to market. But being in the agricultural industry really taught me a lot about the nuances that exist in farming when it comes to the challenges they face. So about 1.5 years ago, I met Jamie Sonneville. This is Jamie in her family's apple orchard. Jamie Sonneville is a 5th-generation apple grower. She's a Cornell grad, and her background is in IT. And about, last spring, she gave me a call, and she said, I built a software for farms, and I want your help taking it to market. So this is AgriTrack. AgriTrack was built, I like to say, from the inside out. So by a farmer for farms, making it one of a kind. We track the most vital data that farms need, which is labor. Who is doing what, when, and where? And why that's the most vital data is because it's directly tied to the government program of H-2A. H-2A enables US farms to hire seasonal labor from other countries. And without that program, they have no workforce. And without no workforce, we can only imagine what happens, right? So because it's a federal program, it's heavily regulated, which means heavy paperwork. And farms have to track so many things already. Everything has to be tracked. They do this not just to understand their farms better, but to stay compliant. Because in that program for labor, if the Department of Labor comes knocking and does an audit, if they're not compliant, they get heavily fined and they could even lose their farm. So the problem with this is that 84% of farms today are still tracking everything with pen and paper. It's completely unsustainable. And why I say unsustainable is because the Department of Labor reports that during these audits, 70% of those audits in agriculture find some type of violation or infraction. Just can't continue. So AgriTrack helps solve this by digitizing the problem of pen and paper. Farmers can use AgriTrack and have confidence in their data collection, knowing that it's accurate, and that if the Department of Labor comes, they have peace of mind. So AgriTrack accomplishes this in a trio of apps. The first is a web dashboard, where farm owners and managers can take a look in real time at what's happening in their farm. And then there's a tablet app, which is primarily used in the field for data inputs that feed directly into the dashboard. It also utilizes NFC technology for an easy clock in and out, which is really helpful in a farm where they're going all over the place. And then there's a phone app where full-time employees can clock in and out at different locations, and it actually geopins where they've done that. So that's super helpful. So let's take a quick look at how it works. If we can move to the phone demo. Sam here is going to clock in using the phone app. And then if we can move to the dashboard demo. In a few seconds here after she clocks in, we're going to see her time card pop right in. And once it pops in, there it is. We can click on it, and we're going to be able to see where Sam is working at Moscone, and what she's doing, which is presenting. And then when we scroll down, we can see that geopin right here in downtown San Francisco. So who is doing what, when, and where. And we go to the home page of the dashboard, you can see a colorful array of data inputs that are used and helpful for farm owners to just have data to make informed decisions by. The reporting side of it, the one I want to point out is the labor audit report, because it's directly in line with the Department of Labor and that compliance side. So if they do get an audit, all they have to do is run the report, hand it over, and they're good to go. Another thing of note is that farmers can pay their workers differently than other industries. So they can pay hourly, but they also can pay via a method called piece rate. It's basically production-based. So like how many apples did this worker pick? How many branches did they trim? And the farmer has to pay the worker the higher of the two wages. And then when you factor in overtime, you can see how complicated that can get. AgriTrack does all that heavy lifting for them, so we've already built in that algorithm. So payroll becomes a lot easier. In fact, our clients are telling us that payroll used to take about a day or longer, and now they can get it done in minutes and do it from anywhere. So back to the deck, please. So when I joined AgriTrack, we decided to run a test pilot just to check market readiness. We signed 21 farms, and our ARR is approaching 114,000. We also hired a small team to support the customer base and continue developing the platform. But labor is just the tip of the spear. Food traceability is coming, so we're already at work on a module around traceability. And regulations around spray applications are going to continue to change, so we're going to work on a spray module as well. In the future, farms are going to have to track more data than ever before. So with pen and paper, it's just not possible. As AgriTrack continues to aggregate more data across more farms, eventually we're going to implement deep tech like AI and machine learning so that we can provide predictive analytics and then ultimately prescriptive data so that farms can use that to know exactly how to maximize their efficiencies and their yields. Farms have to adopt technology or sadly they're just not going to be around. AgriTrack is perfectly positioned to lead this inevitable change to connected farming. We are growing, which means we're hiring. We're looking for an SDR to continue growing sales, and we're looking for some development team, some devs, and we're also interested in channel partnerships for any software that might complement AgriTrack really well. And finally, if you're a farm, have you signed up with AgriTrack? And if not, let's talk. Thank you.
Oh. Thank you for stepping in for Jamie. Really appreciate it.
Yes, you're welcome.
Mamoon, let's start with you.
All right, well, at a base level, it seems like you're time tracking and payroll software today. And I imagine farms have been paying their employees for many years and for decades. And so I'm trying to understand what's the deficiency amongst the current providers of payroll software for farmers?
So we're not, just to clarify, we're not a payroll software. We track the data that's in the field, and which is really difficult to do, which is why other platforms haven't worked in that space. So think of it this way. You can have a team of workers that can start in one place doing one type of job at one wage, and then move in the same day to another place doing a different job with a different wage. So a lot of the legacy software systems out there that are built for other industries simply won't work in farming. So we do take those data points for time cards, and then there's a report that feeds directly into payroll because we do all that algorithm and that math for them when they're trying to figure out which is the prevailing wage.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mar?
Well, I'm surprised you don't run payroll because it's almost like, the next thing. Maybe
Yeah.
you should.
Could be.
Anyways, the question I have is how do you sell into these farms, right? I
Yeah.
think most of farms are small farms, and how are you guys doing it today? And
Yeah, great question.
Is
So
it economic to do that?
yeah, so we found that farms are, even though it's a huge industry, they're very tightly knit and tightly connected. So the first, like in this test pilot, it was really a matter of the network effect, as well as just outbound and letting them know we're in the area, we're new, we're working on helping them. And when one farmer adopts, you're sure to find neighboring farms that start looking and saying, well, what are they doing? We should do the same thing.
If your customer asks, what's my ROI if I bring in your product, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. We found our current clients are reporting an average savings of 8 minutes per worker per day in savings. That was essentially what we call payroll leakage. So when you add that to the number of workers and the hours in a week on a 6-day work week, that adds up really quickly. So we have one of our first clients said that they paid for their subscription to AgriTrack within the first few weeks of harvest.
Matthew and then Dana.
Can you talk a little bit about H2A compliance and kind of like the sort of special sauce there?
Yeah, so that's something that's unique to AgriTrack that differentiates us from anybody else. You would think that something had come out to help farms manage H2A because it is literally vital to their existence. Without a workforce, they can't survive, plain and simple. So H2A is a very regulated program, which is what was really important to Jamie to dig into to help farms manage that. I spoke to one farmer that said that just to make sure that all the H2A is set up, he spends about a month and a half off season just making sure everything is lined up, all the paperwork is done, all the regulations are covered. It's a headache. Farmers, just so you know, just to piggyback, because a lot of people don't know this. Farmers have to pay for the housing for the workers. They have to give them transportation to and from the store. They have to pay them the wages. They have to pay for their transportation to and from. It's a lot of output for the farm, but it's necessary. They can't live without it, so they have to do it.
So, first of all, great presentation. I am a total sucker for a cute photo at the beginning and the authenticity.
I don't know how cute it was, but thank you.
I mean, it's good to show the authenticity. I think, especially in an area like this. Yeah. But and an ask at the end. So well done. I guess I think it's always really appealing to enter into an industry that says it's still paper and pen, but there's so much that goes into that in terms of adoption and the challenges around it. And so, in addition to housing, I mean, do farmers have to provide a phone to all of the workers? Like, how does the app work? Like, adoption.
Yeah, so that's another thing. Credit to Jamie for thinking of. The phone app is actually a web app, so it's literally a browser. Yeah, where they can clock in and check in, so it's no different than.
So they use it on their existing phones. You don't have to be providing anything.
They don't have to download a plan or download an app to do it.
And has it been pretty, I mean, I know it's early on, but is adoption an issue and sort of adherence?
Yeah, so it is an industry that is slow to adopt.
Yeah.
But what's really cool is there's a new generation for the first time that's recognizing the importance of digitizing farms. So they are like, we need to do this to their parents and grandparents, right? But also, the beautiful thing about AgriTrack is it's directly tied to the workers' pay. So they have to adopt it or they don't get paid. Yeah.
And then, sorry, one last.
Sure, yeah.
But from the compliance piece on H2A, does that automatically sort of upload to whatever regulatory body needs to be uploaded?
You are onto it, yes. So we work with several labor brokers that also help us keep updated on changing regulations around H2A. So we build that right into the system, and all the farmers, they don't have to worry about it. We take care of that for them, so it just updates.
So you'll ingest new regulatory compliance rules and then also export the appropriate reports?
Yes.
Mar?
Yeah, can I ask you two numbers? How much are you charging per worker? I assume it's a per worker fee.
So we have a tiered pricing structure, and it's based on the amount of AgriTrack they're going to use and the number of headcounts during peak season. So the entry level for like a really small farm that might have 10 employees could be as low as like 2,000 a year, and then it scales from there depending on where they go and how many headcounts they have.
Okay, and the second, sorry, we're gonna do some math in the
Yeah.
back. What's the hourly rate of a farm worker?
So the raises every year, and this is what's another really insightful thing. So I believe this year it's $16.90 an hour, and yeah, I forgot my second thought.
That's okay, it's good. I don't
yeah.
want to take more airspace.
Yeah.
Charles?
I just had one question. You've got these two value propositions. You've got the sort of data capture and compliance.
Mm-hmm.
It feels to me like the compliance one is the more salient one for your customer. Am I getting the right conclusion from the presentation?
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, these early adopters of AgriTrack, the number one reason has been around the compliance because of what's at stake. However, the aggregate data is going to be like none other because we're collecting data that nobody else is collecting right now. Yeah. And it's very granular, and it is, yeah.
Marissa?
Since you're starting from the compliance standpoint, I'm wondering if you've seen anything in terms of improved efficiency and productivity, because my guess is when you're looking at where people are working, illnesses, someone doesn't show up, or different needs here or there due to weather or the like, are you finding that even anecdotally you're starting to see improvements in terms of how the farm runs more on a global level?
Yeah, right. So one of the really other cool things about AgriTrack is that we start their timer when they clock in and out to the minute. It's actually literally to the second. Whereas previously, pen and paper, it's like, okay, it was like 7 to 5, you know, or there are other systems out there that round to the nearest 15, the quarter hour, which loses that gap, right? So the workers have been excited so far because now they're getting paid for when they actually work. So if you have a worker that shows up early and wants to get to it, they're getting paid. And if they stay late, they're getting paid. So yeah, productivity is definitely kind of an ancillary benefit.
Well, that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay.
Round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys have been a great audience. I really appreciate the participation and the care that you gave and the respect to all the companies. They worked very hard to be here. You can see 180 more companies that start a battlefield on the second floor of Moscone, so I'd encourage you to do that. But what's going to happen now is these judges are going to go in the back into a secret room and deliberate. TechCrunch editorial is out of the picture now, and the fate of this competition is the hand of the judges behind me. But you need to stay tuned. Daryl will be right back out with the next interview. Thank you so much. We'll see you next year.